Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this advanced session. So, Advanced Business Process Management with Power Automate and Dr. Flo. I'm actually Dr. Flo. I'm also known as Serge Luca. I'm a business application MVP. I'm MVP for the 14th year. I'm also specialized in Office 365. I'm based in Brussels. And I have a company with another MVP, Isabel van Kampenhout. The company is named Power Platform Associate. So this session is about creating complex application with the Power Platform and with Power Automate. And most of what you will learn in this session will come from a free tool that I did create last year. I'm still working on it, but it's available on GitHub, which is the Power Platform BPM Toolkit. Business Process Management Toolkit, which is a tool which is 100% written with the Power Platform. It's free and open source. Okay, so this is not a commercial session, it's a technical session. In this tool, business can create a workflow. They don't need to know Power Automate. It provides state machine, which is something that we don't have in the Power Automate engine. So you can go back and forward in the business process, which is the minimum you need for creating business complex application. Workflow can change at runtime. That's something possible. Even though the process starts, you can still change it when it started. There's no workflow duration limit. You know that with Power Automate, there is a 30 days limitation in the workflow, which is really annoying when you want to deal with complex business process. With the toolkit, there's no limitation. Even though it's built on top of Power Automate, with Power Automate, there is task delegation, so people can delegate their task to someone else, which could be annoying. For instance, if you get tasks and you are in a complex pipeline, approval pipeline, and you are sick or you are not available, so the whole business process is stuck. So with BPM Toolkit, you can delegate your task to someone else. You can have custom task forms. There is a whole pipeline security in the BPM Toolkit. So when you have a pipeline of people who need to review or to approve or to reject, so only the people in the pipeline, and of course people who submit the case, can see or interact with the data, right? If you want, of course. You can visually follow the business process. There is an integration with the robotic process automation, and this minimizes the number of premium licenses that you need to purchase. So you can get the tool on this GitHub location. So it's there for you. You have a setup guide, you have a developer's guide, you have video. Actually, the first iteration of the BPM Toolkit, which is the one which is on GitHub now, which is in preview, is based on SharePoint. So internally, it's SharePoint. The engine runs on top of SharePoint list, completely secure. But I have an alpha version of the BPM Toolkit, which is running on Dataverse. Okay, it's 80% complete. I still have to port to migrate the security engine. So from this toolkit, I've learned a lot of stuff. I will share a few of them here. So first pattern, which is elevation of privilege. What is that? So if you use Power Apps and Power Automate, so let's say that you have Alexia use a Power Apps application, and the Power Apps application is calling a flow to update information in the backend. Usually that's the best practice. And the flow has been set up with an account called the Flow Maker account. So the question is, if your flow access SharePoint or Dataverse, who's going to access SharePoint or Dataverse? Is it Alexia or is it the Flow Maker account? So actually it is Alexia, which is normal in terms of security, but this can be annoying if you want your flow to do things that Alexia cannot do, like accessing some system table, setting security, etc., etc. So how can you fix that? To fix this, you need to create a second flow that will be called by the first flow. So here, same system, Alexia call Power Apps that call a flow, install with the Flow Maker account, and then this flow can use an action called run a child flow that will call a second flow, right? Also installed with the Flow Maker account. And this second flow can access SharePoint, can use premium feature, for instance. But the idea is not Alexia who will access SharePoint. It's going to be Flow Maker account. Okay, so if you have an indirection, then it's not the first caller who access the resource. Also, it's a good opportunity for putting a premium feature in these flows. Then you can only buy one per flow license for the whole company. So it's not per user license, it's a per flow. So you can have up to 5 premium flow for $500 per month. That's legal, right? Right. So also, you know that there is a limitation in the number of API call. The question is, in this scenario, who call? Is it FollowMaker account or is it Alexia? It's actually Alexia. So Alexia pay for the API calls. If you follow this pattern, I follow this pattern everywhere in the BPM toolkit. My advice is be very careful. There is a danger in terms of compliance. There's no traceability. So we don't have any trace that Alexia access the resource. It's the flow service account that access the resource. So your application might not become compliant. So if you want compliancy, then you need to pass the user account through the flow. And then you need to store that in somewhere in the logging layer. That's important. Second pattern, I call that the secure record pattern. What is that? So usually when I try to store information in a record, what I do is this. I create a blank record, I secure the record, and then I fill in the record. So example here in my Power Automate code, first here in this scope, I create the blank record in the SharePoint list. Then this code secure the record with unique permission, and then I update the record with business information, right? That is very important. Next pattern. For one of my projects, I had to create 60 forms, different forms, complex forms, that submit information to the BPM toolkit to be approved, review, etc. So that's a lot of code, right? So I had to make that very generic. Oh, this is Power Apps because most of my forms are written with Power Apps. And before submitting the information to the backend, I store all the information in a global variable like this. So you see a lot of fields here. And to make that generic, I call a flow, of course, which is generic, and I pass the JSON information. So in Power Apps, there is a JSON function. You just need to pass your global function in there, and everything will be JSON. So you send JSON to your backend. One flow for all the 55 forms, right? That's very interesting. So this is the backend flow. You see, it's called by Power Apps. I grab the information from the caller, that's the form data, JSON, and I pass that to a second flow, okay, a child flow here. So the JSON is sent to this second flow. And in the second flow, I can check the type of request, I can parse the information, I can do whatever you want, but it's generic. And also, you might also want to have one code that will store the information in your backend. So you can do that dynamically. So for instance, you have to update a row in CDS, Dataverse, or update item in SharePoint. And if you don't specify the list name or the table name, the system will take the information dynamically. So I put the old JSON information right here in CDS, so in Dataverse, or in SharePoint. Of course, the field name need to map exactly the field in your object need to map exactly the field name in the backend. That's a very common pattern in the industry. But that works, and that keeps your code very generic. Also, very important pattern. I call that the fire and forget. So in many cases, when I have to communicate with the backend, submit information, and the backend need to take the information, secure information, do some double check, and store it, it takes a while. So I don't want the end user to wait. So I follow this pattern here, which is, look, I call a flow from Power Apps, for instance, and then I respond back to the user here, but the system keeps working. This is not supposed to be the last block of your flow. You can still have code running, even though you respond back to the user. So this makes your interaction with the user very interactive. That's very convenient. Look, if your flow is a web service flow, for instance, you have to use a response object, but hey guy, you can still have code running even though the system responds back to the end user. Okay, you can still run. So that's very important and very powerful. Okay, next pattern, which is, you know that when you use Power Automate, limitation is 30 days for a flow. And the consequence is actually, in practice, it's 30 days for the approval, because usually you listen, you wait for people who approve from the same flow. So that means 30 days. In the real world, 30 days, it's unusable. I mean, we need more, sometimes 1 year or sometimes more than 1 year. So in the BPM toolkit, there's no limitation, even though the BPM toolkit is written with the Power Platform. And I had to create my own workflow engine. I know it's crazy. It's like, if you don't like your car, don't criticize people who build cars. You can create your own car, right? So that's what I did. So what I did is this. On top of Power Automate, and with Power Automate, because code is available, I did create a workflow engine. It's the BPM Toolkit workflow engine that provides state machine, unlimited workflows, unlimited approval, etc. And this workflow engine is actually a bit crazy. It's a nice piece of technology. This is the BPM Toolkit core component. And some of these components here are the BPM Toolkit workflow engine. We have a workflow runtime, we have a workflow generator, we have a workflow optimizer, you see? So these are, I don't want to get into the detail. Code is available. I will write a blog post that describes how this engine works, but it fixes all the issue that we have with the Power Automate engine. I mean, so yes, they could do it. And the consequence is, I'm not using the out-of-the-box approval system of Power Automate because it's limited to 30 days. It's not flexible enough for real business scenario. I've created my own. So I have an application called My Dashboard where people can approve or reject their task. So it's all Power Platform. And this is the same application. People who need to approve something can even see the comment from other approver on the specific case. Now, business should be able to update the workflow. I'm not talking about IT, I'm talking about business. Create and update workflow. In BPM Toolkit, the workflow definition is stored in a list that I call the meta workflows. So you can specify that I create a workflow with this name. You see, this is the name of my workflow. Step 0 will be this, 1 this, step 2 this, step 3 this, 4 tip. There's no limitation in the number of steps. And you can specify, this is going to be the role for step 0, role for step 1, role for step 2, 3, 4. I will explain the role later. This is the kind of action I expect. You can even put go to. You can say if status is negative, so if the response is negative, go to this here. So this machine, the system will do a go to automatically. And so the business understand this. It takes one hour training and they understand that. So they can change the workflow. Of course, this is interpreted by Power Automate. I will get back to this. Role-based approval and review. What is this? With Power Automate, if you want to ask people to approve, it's based on people, not on group. Sometimes you need to ask team of people, team of HR officer, team of HR legal, team of HR finance to approve, right? So you can create with BPM Toolkit actors. So you define actors in the SharePoint list, just the text here. Okay. And then, you define actor here. We call that roles. Okay, it's just text in the SharePoint list. And then you can specify who is in roles, which email is in which role. And then you will see the next step. I will show that later, but this is also the issue of task delegation. I told you before that in a complex business process, when people get a task, well, they should be able to delegate a task to someone else. And if it does not work, then an officer should be able to do that for them. So in BPM Toolkit, we have task delegation. So this is a Power Apps application where you can create your task. You can specify, I'm delegating my task from this time to that time to this guy. See? And the system will automatically reassign the task live. Visualizing your business process. People who submit case so employees who submit a case, should be able to follow their business process. I'm Serge Luca, I did submit a case at that time, and I can see here in my application that the case is being handled, is being waiting for this team, this role, to be done. And then when they do that, the system will skip to the next step, etc. I should be able to visualize my request. I should be able to stop the whole business process as well, if I want, which is something you cannot do with Power Automate. So there is a workflow center where officers, not people, officers can visualize all the business process. They can filter, they can see which one is rejected, stop, etc. They can see exactly where the business is waiting for. You see, it's fully interactive. It's completely built with Power Apps. And what are the business process officers' activities? So basically, let's see the following cases. So the business activities are approving, rejecting, commenting, skipping step, add new reviewer at runtime. They should be able to add new reviewers at runtime. So changing the workflow, take ownership of the workflow, redirect before, redirect after, redirect to another person, stop the whole business process, remove a business process, discuss with colleagues in teams, visualize cases. So let's see an example here. I'm an employee. I'm submitting a part-time request. This is a Power Apps form. I will go very quickly through the form because that's not the most interesting part. I have a wizard. Go to specify different criteria. Okay, it's Power Apps. Right. And then I can save it as a draft, or I can send to approval. So let's say I'm sending that to approval. I can still add additional people in the workflow, even though a workflow has been predefined to some specific role. If I want, I can put people on the loops dynamically, and then it's submitted. Okay, next step, it will be handled by who? By officers. Could be HR officer in this case. And then HR officer will go to the workflow command center. They will click on this. They will see the whole business processes, right? Like this one. This is the one I've just submitted. It's waiting for this team to react. And then you see there are other business processes. Some people have rejected, for instance. Here you see there is a star, meaning that actually there was a redirection to another user, right? So it has been submitted, the task has been submitted to a user, and the user did put a redirection to this guy, so it has been redirected to another user. So an officer, I'm taking the case, so I'm clicking on this case. That means when I click here, I have a lot of tools here. You see, first, since I did review my own request, I'm not supposed to be able to do that, but for the demo, I allowed the system to do this. So I have a lot of tools here. So I'm part of this team, okay? And since I'm part of this team, I can see the case, of course, otherwise you cannot see the case. And what I can do is I can click on OK. So I confirm, okay, so a pop-up show up, I put a comment, I confirm, and then you see it's green now, okay? And the system move to the next step. So this one is orange. This one, you see, is a human, it's not a team. Okay, so you can put individual people in the loop. And then the consequence of this is, yeah, also something very important. You work as part of a team. That means if you want to work on this, you have to unlock the process. So there is a tool, so you see here, you can see which process is locked. There is this picture here, it's locked. Because your colleagues working in the same team need to know that you are actually working on the process, right? So you can take ownership. So you see, you can see that another colleague is working on this case, okay? And if you want, you can take ownership. Now you are owner of the request, right? So you can work on it, right? So if you remember, the case has been sent to a user, an individual user. So it could be a manager. The manager is not an officer, it cannot go there, but everyone in the company has a My Dashboard, your dashboard. And then the user will click on this, will get a notification, of course, will click on the dashboard, and user can, of course, they can follow all the case they did submit, If you're a user, you submit something, you can see your case, of course. I mentioned that before. You can stop it if you want. You see, you can stop a process. But you are a manager, you can get approval request, you get this. This is the list of approval. So you can see the comment from other people in the pipeline, if you want, and the comment is secured. So you can delegate your task. I mentioned that before. You can, for instance, accept the approval, accept the request, great. And you see the system will go to the next step. So officer will see that the system goes to the next step for the next guy. Okay. Now, no, I'm an officer. I take the case. And what I can do on this case, let's say that this person, this is a human, it's not a team, is sick. He didn't put any delegation. So I should be able to skip this step. You see, skipping, skip. The engine understands that. It goes to the next step. So this one is skipped. Now in the new version that you see skipped. Okay. So now this team, the request is for this team. So this team, a member of this team can do what? Can, for instance, redirect here if they want. So redirect to 0, step 0. You click there and you go to the 0. So in the cover, the workflow engine, the BPM workflow engine, redirect the user to this step. And if you accept or you reject, for instance, you click here, if you reject, well, in this workflow, there was a logic where if this team reject, the system will redirect to this guy, I think, this team here. So if they reject, this is red, means it's a rejection. And you see, no, this one is orange. The workflow, the runtime is waiting here for this team. So there is a go-to in both directions. So there is a state machine. You see, if you remember, in the workflow definition, we mentioned that if this step is negative, then we go there. Okay, that's how we specify that. Now, let's see another functionality, which is the workflow is waiting here. And if I want, I can put additional people in the loop, insert a new step. Hey, I want to put another guy in the loop. Insert a new step, just specify the person, confirm, and now you see there is a new step here. The system has renumbered all the other steps. See, it's there. Yeah, so we have unlocked all the possibilities of Power Automate, actually. So security model is very, very important because, look, there are two security models in the BPM toolkit. High level, which is the one we have at the moment, and the next version will be no security. In the coming weeks, we have no security. High level means that if a person submits a request, the request is secure. That means the person who submit can visualize, can edit, or you can also submit for someone else on behalf of someone else. Then both of you can see or edit the request. Okay, so they can see and edit. Then the approver in the pipeline can see the request as well because they are approvers, right? Officer can edit the request even if the workflow started. They can edit. They can give the possibility to submitters to edit at some point because sometimes you need to ask people, hey, could you put additional attachment document, thing like this? Okay, so even though the workflow started, so it's not fully locked. You can fully locked or not. That's also something important. There is a security separation of duty between officers. Indeed, if in complex organization, like my customer, for instance, there is HR, but there is HR in different cities. The HR in one city cannot see the case from HR in other cities. Even in the same city, you have HR specialist officers for some specific cases, very sensitive cases. Some people need to be certified for some very sensitive cases. So security is key here. And if you take a look at this is an example of permission matrix that any BPM tool need to be able to follow. We have different cities, different colors, Brussels, Maastricht, and Paris. As you can see, people from Brussels So HR in Brussels can see, read, and write information submitted by people in Brussels. You see, people in Maastricht can read, write information coming from Maastricht, etc. So people from Brussels can also read, write information submitted by people from Luxembourg. You see, so this is how it works. It can be complex. So permission matrix is complex, and the tool must be able to understand that. So the BPM toolkit understands that in a generic way. You don't have to write code for this. It's just putting information in rows. But that is key. I mean, also, when I did the first demo of BPM toolkit to the Power Automate team, what they say is, hey, that's very cool, but could you put integration with robotic process? Robotic process means that you can automate things by running application, running a desktop, simulating a virtual user. So the answer is yes, because in the BPM toolkit, there is an extensibility model where you can create your own custom action. A custom action is a dedicated flow, and you just need to call this flow from the workflow definition. And I don't have the time to demonstrate that, but yes, it's absolutely possible. If you watch this video, you see how I did it. So you will see a new step somewhere. Maybe I have it here. No, you can see a new step in the workflow, and the step running in the cloud will call an application running on the desktop, right? We'll fill in information in the legacy application. The legacy application will stop, and the workflow in the cloud will go to the next step, and you will see that visually in the BPM toolkit. So it's fully extensible. You can create your own custom action. A custom action in BPM toolkit is a dedicated flow. So if you want more, if you want to see a video of this BPM toolkit, you can take a look at this YouTube video here. So the slide is going to be shared. I already shared it actually before the session. Watch this. That's a tour of the features. If you want to get more information about the architecture, watch this video. Okay. And I think we still have 15 minutes, and that means we still have time for some demo. Yes. Yeah. So look, this is a test environment. Well, this is a test environment for my customer, and this is where we can submit requests. So this is a more complex request. I will take this one. An order. I will say I want to buy a Tesla, and amount is, oh, this one is very expensive. Account is this. Contact is this guy. This is my email, right? I can submit that to approval. If I want, I can add an additional approver. I won't. I'm submitting this order, so you will see what happened. In the new version, I use the fire and forget. So you just click, it sends information, and it works in the background. So this one is not using the fire and forget yet. And I will go to the workflow command center. And here you can see the different business processes that are actually running, right? So I can take this one, for instance. Yeah, I will take this one. So in the meantime, the workflow is being generating. So let's take this. Yeah, I want to take ownership of this one. And I want to redirect to step 0. Yeah, this is just a test, right? Confirm. And normally this one will go to step 0. So redirection can be automatic or can be manual by the officer. And normally, if I go back, you see it's there. You can even see that the system specified that, hey, there is a redirection here. So it goes to this if negative. So it goes to this if negative. To which one? To this. It's not very visual, but I think I will make that more visual in one of the next version. Okay, So this is not, well, this is not a PowerPoint. I mean, it's for real, right? So you can skip, you can reassign. I have a new feature, which is ping me. Ping me is very interesting. That means sometimes you want to ask a question to a user, and then you want the system, you want to assign a task to the user, and when the user assigns the task, you want the system to go back to you. So you can say ping me. It's something that looks crazy, but you can say, hey, I want to ping this guy, and after that, I want the system to create an action here. I want you to do this. Okay, so pinging takes a while, but you will see that. Can you hear the noise? No, there is some noise in my building.
No.
No, it's fine.
Perfect.
Okay. I still have 15 minutes, right?
Right.
That's correct. Okay. And then I will show you the code. I will show you how the code is organized. I will show you different version because I have exactly the same version, the same look and feel, but with Dataverse.
Okay.
I know the ping me is a bit slow. So look here, you see? So the system went to this guy, and the step after this one is this guy. By default, the step is the guy who asked to ping. So you ask a question, the workflow goes there, and then the next step will be you. So that's ping me. So it's an innovation, if you want, but I suggest I need to make that more efficient. But well, even though it takes 1 minute, it does not really matter. So now I still need to show you my dashboard. That's where you can see all the requests that you as a user, you submit. That's where you can see your task. That's where you can delegate your task, you see. So this is all the waiting task for me. It's the same application. So I'm not using the Power Automate approval because, I mean, for critical application, does not make sense. Now, technology, right? So let's see the code. Wow. The code is, so first, I have two versions. The one you get in GitHub is this one, the version for SharePoint. Okay, so for SharePoint, everything is in SharePoint list. We use unique permission to make sure that everything is secure, including dynamically. And there is the Dataverse version. But the look and feel is exactly the same. If I go to the Dataverse version, that's the alpha version, right? So you will see the command center is exactly the same. The workflow names are exactly the same. It's just you see the look and feel is the same. It's just the code behind which is a bit different. Now, let's take a look at the code, and I will go to here. I will take the code which is currently in GitHub. So that means today you have actually three packages. The BPM Toolkit is in this package. However, I have another package, which is the ALM, Application Lifecycle Management package, which help you for deploying the BPM Toolkit. Why? The reason is this. In the BPM Toolkit, there are 73 workflows. Here are the workflows. You see, in many cases, you have a proxy and the proxy call the backend. But at the end of the day, that means 73 workflows. And deploying workflows in different SharePoint sites is very complex because, as you know, in Power Automate, the workflow uses the internal GUIDs of your SharePoint list. So if you want to deploy that to another site, you need to change all the GUIDs everywhere. So that's why I did create a tool, which is this tool, ELM, that does that for you. So you have somewhere an Excel sheet that is filling up automatically by the tool that put all the GUIDs and make a search and replace I will show you the Excel document. Make a search and replace of all this GUID with the new GUID. And of course, to do that, I need to, to get into the CDS code, you see. So this is the old GUID, and this is the new GUID generated by the tool, by the way, because when you create your BPM Toolkit site, the tool fill in this document. So you get the GUID. And then the ALM tool make a search and replace directly in CDS, because the workflow is stored in CDS. So it take the workflow code, it make a search and replace, and it store the JSON back into the package. I know it's crazy, but that's all I'm able to deploy the BPM Toolkit in 2 hours instead of 2 days. 2 days in the past, right? So yeah, it was a nightmare. So let's go back to the code. Excuse me. So the BPM Toolkit has 73 workflows. One of them is the workflow runtime, which is here. I will quickly go through the code because I don't want to be too boring. But basically, the workflow runtime, this is the old version. But the workflow runtime in this version is triggered when there is a new item in the specific SharePoint list. And you see, try. The system does something, test the approval status, and check if there is a go-to. If there is a go-to, it goes to in this branch. Otherwise, it tries to find the next step in the workflow. You see? If there is a go-to, it checks if the go-to match the condition for going to the go-to. If not, it goes to the next step. Go to the next step, to the next step, to the next step. If there's no next step, then it sets the final status of the business process. So, as you can see, having state machine, having unlimited workflow was possible, right? So it works, it really works. I mean, it's based on Power Automate. I'm not saying that it was easy, but it's reliable. This is for the workflow runtime. Let's take a look at the other modules quickly. There are Power Apps application, of course. Power Apps application. Let's open the Power Apps application. The one you have seen, like the workflow panel, is the Power Apps application. Of course, the real hero in this story is the workflow engine. And okay, yeah, this is the workflow panel. You see, so the one you see allow officers to act on the business process. Oh yes, I forgot to mention something very important. I forgot to mention this. There is an interaction with teams. Indeed, when you create a team, let me go to team. For each type of request, there is a private channel. Example, my request is named PPA order. So there is a private channel here. And anytime a case is created, an information is created in the private channel. And people, well, officers, can start discussing this request. So they can visualize the request. They click here, they see the form. But more important, they can start talking. They can have a conversation on this request. And they can see the conversation. I think it's this one. I'm not sure this one, but they can see the conversation in the panel. Oh, no, it's not this one. I apologize. Yeah, here. So if in the request there is a conversation, they see the team icon here. So when they click here, they go directly to the conversation in the team. So, and of course, everything is in the private channel, right? Because security is very important. Now, some companies don't want to use team for that. Then I give them an internal messaging. So it's one or the other. I've activated both here, but and so you can, oh, sorry, it's here. Here, you can talk, what is this guy? It's internal conversation, of course, you see? So and we have internal messaging here. So other people can answer the conversation. So it's all there, it shows up here. And it's also archived. So you can choose, either you put conversation in team, and then it's not archived, or you put conversation here in the internal messaging, and it is archived, because the question is, what happened when the case is approved? So it must be archived, of course. And you must be able to trace everything, including the conversation of the officers, right? That's important. I still have 5 minutes, I think. So in 2 minutes, I will open the door to questions. Otherwise, it's going to be very boring for all of you. Last code is the control center. Is this guy. Do we have question, by the way?
No, for the moment, don't have any question.
No, okay, right. So I can take this time for, you see, so this control center is, of course, a Power Apps application. So I told you everything is 100% Power Apps, and you can download the code. You can see how it works. So Power Apps application with, of course, galleries, you see. So galleries containing galleries. So it's all there. Since we have still have 4 minutes, I can show you the code for the Dataverse version. So Dataverse version. So the Dataverse version, it's a mixture Dataverse. So the engine fully works in Dataverse, but defining the workflow for the business, for instance, is still in SharePoint list because it's more convenient. So you see, so business can go there and can say, hey, this is my workflow, and I want to change the role, for instance, or I want to change a step, or I want to add an additional step in the workflow. So keeping some list is still very interesting for the business, because the business is supposed to be able to change things, like the roles definition is in SharePoint list, you see. So you can specify who is in which role. So business can do that. Business can edit that and add new people or remove people from some roles. So HR can do that. But for the rest, in the Dataverse version, let me find the code. Where is the code? In the Dataverse version, it's in Dataverse. So I have different number of packages. I have a Dataverse data layer, Dataverse UI, Dataverse core. So the organization is a bit different. I can show you the Dataverse layer. So we have three tables in the Dataverse for the engine. So case lifecycle, case workflows. And quickly, just to show you the code, where is the code, the core, and you can see, I will finalize the session on this, but where is the runtime? Yeah, the runtime is here. And you can see that the runtime is really based on Dataverse. And which Dataverse? Because you know that there is Dataverse for Teams and Dataverse for, I would call that Pro. At the moment, it's Pro, but of course, I will make it running in Dataverse Teams. But then the security model will be different because some business process, you see, this one goes to Dataverse. So it's full Dataverse. Okay.
Okay.
So,
we have one question, Serge.
You have a question?
Okay. Which Microsoft license are needed for a user? Power Up license, some more?
Yeah, that's a good question. So by default, if you use the SharePoint version, you just need the Office 365 standard license. However, if you want to create your own custom step, custom action, at the moment, you need a premium license, So I recommend the per flow license because the per flow give you for $500 premium feature on the server. Okay, so custom action at the moment require premium, require the per flow, not for every end user, just one for the whole company, right? So that's if you want to extend that, calling RPA, creating your own custom action that take information, generate a document in the fly, put it in an archive, that custom. So you can, so there is an extensibility model. It's very cool. Now, if you want to use the Dataverse version, you need a premium license for every end user. That's the normal pro model.
Okay.
So the question is, in Teams, you won't need premium license, but of course, the security model will be different. It's less secure, okay, because you don't have all the security flexibility that we have in SharePoint or in Dataverse Pro in the normal Dataverse version. I think we reached the end of the session. Is there any other question?
No.
There's no other question?
No.
So I hope that you enjoy this session and this event in general. Don't forget to fill out this survey. You can still send me questions on Twitter if you want. And thank you very much. You can still ping me to this Twitter
Thanks.
address. Thank you very much.
Serge. Very, very interesting this session, and how it's possible to change all GUID for SharePoint list. It's
Yes.
great work because it's one of the most difficult that we have to move solution before different SharePoint site. Then very interesting this part and all project in general.
Thank you very much.
To share with us your knowledge, because it's very, very important.
It's a real pleasure for me. Thank you for having me.